remember to love your bowel, remember to love your body, because your body in a whole is fighting with you, not against you. It's made me reconnect with my body, and I understand my body a lot more. I'm able to listen to it more. I'm able to understand the symptoms more so that I can act on it a little bit faster than when I was disconnected from my body. If I'm a hypochondriac, that's fine. That's a thing. But then find someone who can help me with that.
Welcome to the Sick is Cool podcast, the show that's here to empower you, inspire you, and remind you that even in the face of chronic illness, you can lead an extraordinary life. I'm your host, Aimee Esther, and I'm thrilled to have you join our community. I understand the daily struggles, the physical and emotional roller coasters, and the relentless search for purpose and joy amidst it all. Although none of us chose to be a part of the Sick Club, here we are, warriors navigating a world that often doesn't understand us. Together, we are going to build a vibrant and supportive community that celebrates resilience and courage of the chronically ill. Now let's dive into today's episode and start reshaping our perspective on chronic illness. Welcome, Caroline. I'm so excited to talk to you and share your insights and hear all the things that you're going to teach us today. So first, could you just introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about you, your illness, and then anything else you want to share?
Yes, and thank you for having me. My name is Caroline, and I am 33 years old, and I'm from Denmark. And my YouTube channel is called The Art of Being Ill. I also have an Instagram by the same name. I was 22 when I got diagnosed with morbus Crohn, an autoimmune inflammatory bowel disease. That's a long word. And when I was 30, I had depression and anxiety, and was later on also diagnosed with ADD. So that was the short version of that.
Wow. Yeah. So how have you dealt with all of that?
Well, it's been a journey. I got my Crohn's diagnosis first, but as it turns out, the brain and the gut is very highly connected. So looking back, they should probably have sent me to a psychiatrist when I got that diagnosis, because they have found out that people with bowel diseases often have mental illness as well. So I had 8 years where it went a lot up and down, both mentally, but also with my bowel, where it was never just steady and stable. And found out when I was 30, 8 years later, that was probably because of my ADD, that my bowel couldn't find peace. So it's been really interesting. I've tried a lot of different types of medicine. I'm taking a lot of types of medicine, and been admitted a few times to the hospital, and I have tried everything.
Yeah.
in the medical system.
Yeah, I totally relate to that. Like, I've done like the holistic, I've done like the witch doctory stuff, I've done the like medication, the surgeries, even like all the stuff.
Yes, I've done it.
It's so hard.
Changed my diet. Yeah,
and I think you're right. It's all connected, right? Like, I think our brain is so.
It
I'm
is.
learning, the more like I get into this journey, the more I learn of how my brain is really connected to my body, and like part of my story, I feel like started because of trauma, like emotional trauma in my past.
Yeah,
that just like I didn't let out my emotions for so long that then my body's like, well, we got to let it out somehow, and turn things off. So speaking of trauma, the topic I wanted to discuss today was medical trauma, because I think that is something that a lot of us have dealt with. So first of all, what is medical trauma for anyone who isn't aware or has not heard that term before?
Well, medical trauma is like normal trauma, but in regard to a medical situation. So that can be getting a diagnosis. It can be the illness in itself that's causing you trauma due to severe pain or whatever you experience of symptoms. It can be the meeting with healthcare professionals who are gaslighting you, who are not taking you serious. It can be getting admitted urgently to the hospital. Maybe you had a near-death experience, it was a close call. So everything really related to illness and healthcare systems that can cause traumas, that's medical trauma. But it's the same symptoms as any other types of trauma. It's just not something we talk a lot about, actually. It wasn't until I started psychotherapy that my therapist said to me, Caroline, I'm pretty sure you have trauma from being admitted to the hospital. What? Is that something I can have from that experience? I don't think that's something we ever talk about in society. The trauma you go through when you get admitted, you get a diagnosis, your whole life changes. And like, I've never heard about medical trauma before I got sick.
Yeah, no, that's so true. And like, like my therapist once told me, like, trauma, you think about it as like, oh, this thing's traumatic, this thing's not, but trauma happens in your head. So like we could technically go through the same experiences. One person could have trauma from it, the other couldn't. Obviously, there's lots of situations where most people would probably have trauma with, with certain things, but it happens in our heads. That doesn't mean that it's our fault, of course, but like,
no,
it's our brains trying to protect us and like, hey, like this thing happened that was scary or made me feel bad. And it can create that like fear response in your brain, even if it seems like, I know for me, sometimes it's like, that seems like a little thing, but then why am I like so nervous to go to find another primary care doctor just because I like had experiences with other ones of, maybe gaslighting or, and making me feel like, okay, maybe your pain isn't real or things like that. And it makes me scared. Like it, even though it's like, it's just a doctor. Like, I don't know why I'm so scared about that, but it's a real feeling and it can really stop you. And obviously there's different levels. There's really extreme medical trauma that people have had. But I think it affects so many people. This episode is sponsored by VIOME. If you're struggling with a health issue and can't figure out why, your gut could be to blame. When your body doesn't have enough good bacteria, bad bacteria flourish. Did you know that about 70% of our immune systems are found in our gut? Poor gut health and microbiome imbalances can lead to inflammation and a host of other issues that affect not only your immunity, but things like your weight, joints, skin, bloating, energy levels, sleep quality, and even your mood and mental clarity. If you have followed my health journey at all, you know that I have suffered from pretty much all of these issues. It is so frustrating to live with limited energy and lots of pain and fatigue. If you have related to any of these conditions, you need to check out VIOME. VIOME will tell you exactly what's going on inside your body and give you solutions to help. Thankfully, you may be able to fix a lot of these issues by having the right diet and the right pre and probiotic. VIOME makes this process really simple by offering an at-home gut test so you can know the state of your gut health and what problems it may be causing. This test will ship straight to your door with the collection instructions. Activate your kit, complete the test, and ship it back for free. Their CLIA accredited labs analyze your microbiome activity using cutting-edge RNA technology. VIOME's gut intelligence test reveals 20 integrative health scores, including your inflammatory activity, metabolic fitness, and gut lining health. You'll get results in 2 to 3 weeks through the app, along with personalized nutrition recommendations for your unique microbiome. They'll even reveal superfoods specific to you to enjoy and foods you should consume less or avoid. I took the VIOME gut test, and let me tell you, it was so helpful to me. I have struggled with gut issues and lots of health issues. That's why we're here. And because I would try so many diets that didn't work, I would get extremely stressed out when I would eat. I never knew what to eat. I knew that pretty much everything would make me sick. And so I would just get a lot of anxiety around meals. And now, thanks to VIOME, I actually know the right foods for me. And it even shows me why I should avoid certain foods and why I should eat certain foods. Something really interesting with my gut health test is that there were very few vegetables that ended up in my enjoy and my superfoods list, but I always felt like every other vegetable made me so sick, and VIOME's gut test actually showed me that I was right about that. And I'm grateful that VIOME helped validate what I was feeling and to help me to see more clearly and not only tell me what foods I should avoid and what I should eat, but why I should avoid them and why I should eat them. And it's helped me to create a better diet for myself. But I genuinely have loved my experience with VIOME, and it has helped me see so much clearer the types of foods that are good and bad for my body. Don't let your gut keep you from living your best life. Take control of your health today because because no one else is going to. As a special offer to my listeners, VIOME is offering $110 off your test kit. Go to tryviome.com/AimieEsther, that's AIMEEESTHER, and use code AimieEsther for $110 off. If you're watching this on YouTube, check the link in the description or in the podcast notes if you're listening on your favorite podcast app for more information about VIOME. Now let's head back to the episode.
So can you share some experiences you've had with medical trauma? Anything you faced?
Yeah. Like I mentioned with my psychotherapist who told me that I think you have a trauma from being admitted to the hospital. For me, that was the first time I got admitted, well, both times I got admitted where it was for a longer period of time. The first time I got diagnosed, so I had this really severe flare. And I didn't know it was a flare, obviously, but I remember the pain in my bowel, and I remember lying on my living room floor and crying in a fetal position and being 100% sure I was going to die. And I was told later on that my infection numbers had actually been so high that if I hadn't gone to the hospital, I probably would have died. So that was in itself very traumatizing for me. And the second time I got hospitalized was when on my 22nd birthday, actually. And I had to stay for a week. And the thing about being admitted is you don't get admitted unless you're really sick. So already there is it's really an anxious situation. But it's boring, but they also love to use needles on you. They take all these tests and it's uncomfortable and you're already in pain and you're just lying there, not being able to do anything. And I just remember being so depressed and so like, I don't want to be here. I could cry from the thought every time they said, we are going to keep you another day. I was like, oh, I want to go home. Like, it's been so bad for me that now when I get a flare, I get anxious on top of the flare because I'm afraid of getting admitted. I'm afraid this is something I have to go to the hospital for, that I can't deal with it at home. So I'm in pain and I'm getting anxious. I start to sweat. I get dizzy. It's really, really horrible for me. It's like I will go very far, maybe also too far, to avoid going to the hospital. And that's my trauma response. I don't want to be there if I don't have to. I literally have to see death coming for me before I voluntarily go to the hospital because I just can't handle being admitted to the hospital. I can't even go. If someone I know is admitted to the hospital, just visiting them, I do it anyway because it's important to visit people in the hospital. But just seeing them lying there, it just re-traumatizes me because I remember what it's like to just be there. So that has definitely, I have even once been admitted very shortly where she said, we want to keep you overnight just to make sure you're okay. And I was like, no, if you can't find anything wrong with me right now, I'm going home. I'm not staying. I can't stay. Like, that's how bad it is for me. I hate hospitals. I hate it. And so I think that's been a really big trauma for me. But an even greater trauma, probably the biggest I've had in my whole journey with chronic illness, was when I got depression and anxiety. And I went to my doctor's office and told him about it. And he said to me, we need a psychologist to do, not a psychologist, a psychiatrist to do an evaluation on you. So he sent me to the local psychiatry we have where I live. And it was such a bad experience. I was talking to this psychologist for like 30 minutes, and I don't remember. The only question I remember was, she asked me, is there anything else you think I should know? And I remember thinking, I don't know what you need to know to help me. I mean, what? I don't know. I feel like shit. What do you want to know? And then I went home and she didn't even give me any feedback. And the next day I got a mail in my online mailbox that said that she didn't think there was anything wrong with me. I was just having a hard time adapting to the pandemic. This was in 2020. And so if I felt a little sad, I could always go see some kind of a therapist. Of course, it was in a more formal language, but that was actually what she was saying. And when I read that, I broke. That's when I fell apart. That's when I had to go on sick leave. That's when I couldn't move from my couch. I called my doctor crying. He called them and said, now she can't even work anymore. You have to reevaluate. They just refused to help me. They let me down so bad. I ended up having to pay in the private sector to get help. And within the hour I was there, the psychologist in the private sector told me that I'm pretty sure you have a moderate to severe depression and you have some anxiety as well, maybe a phobia towards COVID. And I'm pretty sure you might have ADD as well, but we need to do some more testing. So I went from there's nothing wrong with you to you need medicine. And the letdown I have felt, the trust I lost, in that moment, I mean, it's haunting me till this day that you can just reject someone and say there's nothing wrong with you. And I actually needed medical treatment. I didn't just need a therapist. I needed medicine. And they rejected me for whatever reason. She didn't even ask me a lot of questions or, I don't know. My doctor said he was pretty sure it was about money. It was about resources. They just, they don't have enough money to treat everybody. But rather tell me that than tell me there's nothing wrong with me. Rather say, we can't afford helping you and you're not the worst case, so we have to prioritize. Rather that than just rejecting me and invalidating my feelings. I was like, if this is how I'm supposed to feel, if they're saying there's nothing wrong with me and this is how I'm supposed to feel, I don't want to live anymore. That was how far it went. And it's the biggest letdown I've ever experienced in my life. And till this day, I still get angry. I still get upset when I think about that experience. And I was just privileged and blessed enough to be able to afford going into the private psychiatry. But if I hadn't, I wouldn't have gotten any help. It was horrible. And
no, that's...
You wanted to say something?
No, yeah, I was just going to say how hard, there's so many aspects of it because, where I am, we have insurance, but I still have to pay for everything. And it's you add that into it where there's trauma with, I've spent, I've gone to the ER and it was nothing. And then I'm like, okay, now I'm scared to go and spend the money. I don't want to waste the money, but then what if something is wrong? It's hard it's hard to get out of your head sometimes in those situations when you've experienced things that, have lost that trust. There are times where I'm like, I don't trust myself. I'm like, is this real? And I think one of the hardest things to be told sometimes is that's normal. I remember when after I had my second baby, I was having such bad anxiety. I wasn't sleeping. And I was telling my therapist this. I was like, I can't sleep. I literally can't fall asleep. I feel terrified, even though I don't know why I'm terrified. I can't be alone. If I did fall asleep, I'd have a nightmare for sure. I'd usually have 3 night terrors where I'd wake up screaming in the middle of the night. I was telling him all this stuff, and he was like, "Oh, that's normal for new moms. That's so normal." And I'm like, "No, I actually like when my baby wakes up at night because it means that I'm doing something instead of just laying there in bed." And I was trying to explain this to him, and he's like, "Oh, it's normal, it's normal." And he was like, "Just, don't watch TV before bed and don't all just the classic things."
All those,
And I ended up later being referred to a different therapist who did EMDR, trauma therapy. And that changed my whole life. And she was like, "Okay, no, this is not normal." And that was almost good for me to hear that, no, I knew this was worse than just you have anxiety because you have a new baby and you're trying to take care of him. This is, I can't function. And
exactly.
And then I got the help I needed, and that healed me from that part, that kind of trauma of feeling okay, there's nothing wrong with you, even though I knew there was. And I think you have to rebuild that trust. So how have you worked on rebuilding that trust? Because sometimes someone comes along, my new therapist, and she fixes it. But sometimes you have to do that on your own and have to still put yourself out there, even though, you've lost some trust in the medical system. So what is your advice for that? How do you rebuild that?
Yeah, I think when it comes to the physical illness part of it, I have not lost any trust because I've always been taken serious there. So it's more in the psychiatric system. And I don't really know if I'm back to trusting them. I think I was fortunate when I came into the private sector that there was someone taking me serious. So the reputation of psychologists and psychiatrists weren't ruined for me because I was experiencing someone who was validating what I was going through. So I think that's, getting a second opinion might actually be a really good idea if you get some trauma for being gaslighted. Talk to someone else because they might see it differently. And I think, I don't know, it's so hard and there's no like easy solution to gaining trust other than just trying to meet different types of health professionals who like can rebuild your trust really. So it's a little hard to, I don't think I have any wise words for that. I think it's about just trying, if you go into a new healthcare professional, just try to be like, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. Try to say to yourself, of course, this person is a psychologist because they want to help people. Try to say to yourself, that's the case. And it's easier said than done. Time heals a lot as well. We all know that. And I don't know. I have, to be honest with you, I don't think, I save up a little money every month, especially for the fear that I need the psychiatric system again, because I do not trust in the universal healthcare system when it comes to the psychiatry in Denmark anymore. I'm so afraid of it. So I've made my own little security saving in case I need to go back into that system so I can pay for it. So I have to be honest with you. I don't trust the public psychiatric system in Denmark. But I do trust psychologists and psychiatrists because when I went into the private sector, I found some amazing ones that showed me there are actually psychologists and psychiatrists out there who do want to help and who listens to you and who takes you seriously and validates your feelings. So that's probably the best thing you could do. Get a second opinion and see what other people say, because as you probably know, there's a huge difference when it comes to healthcare professionals. There's not. Some of them should never have been healthcare professionals, and some of them are sent from God. That's just the way it is.
No, it's so true. And I think for me, I have to remind myself that they're human, because like when I go somewhere, I remember I had kidney stones once, and I went in the middle of the night, and I'm just like, I feel like I'm always in pain, but I'm still limp. I'm like, give me the drugs. I'm dying. I was in the ER in the middle of the night with kidney stones, like as an adult. This was last year. And I'm like rolling around on the bed because I'm in so much pain. And the nurse was like annoyed at me. He's like, stop moving. I need to get your IV in. And I'm just like, I'm just like, I remember thinking he has no empathy. Like he doesn't even know, like, how does he not like care that I'm in this much pain? And then I realized, like, because he sees this all the time, like this is his whole day is seeing people in pain. So he's kind of desensitized to it. Like he's not there to be my emotional support. He's there to fix, whatever physical medical problem there is. And he has to stay that way, or else he's not going to do a good job. And I think in some ways, like they learn, they go too far, right? They have no empathy but I have to remind myself, like, it's because they're a human who's really, most of them are just trying to do their job. Most doctors only have like 15 minutes to see you, and they are just doing their best. It's just that the system's not great anywhere you go. Like, anyone I talk to, it's like, here people complain you have to pay for it. Other places they complain because they don't get the help they need, or because like it just like there's always something that's going to be off about it, because we are living in this imperfect world and we are working with imperfect people. And yes, there are some people who are just not great people and probably shouldn't be in the field, but I genuinely think that most of them, if you see them for like their humanness, or like actually got to know them or actually saw what their day was like, or saw, maybe the other patients they were seeing that, were struggling more. And so they really do think that you're going to be okay, or they just mentally, it's like too much of a load for them. And so they're not having a good day. Like there are just so many reasons why they could treat you that way. And even though it sucks and I don't want anyone to be treated that way, I have to constantly remind myself that like, it has nothing to do with me. Like even if they think there's nothing wrong with me and they're like, oh, she's making it up. That could literally be just because they had a bad day and they don't have the mental capacity to deal with me. And we don't always we don't pretty much never see the other side of it. We don't see what, the fight they had with their spouse that morning, or we don't see the last patient they had that was really hard, or, there's just so many things that could happen. And then unfortunately, because we don't see that, we usually internalize it and be like, oh, it's me. It's about me. They don't believe me or whatever. And we really need to take a step back. And I have to constantly work on it. Like take a step back. It's like, it's not that he has no empathy or he doesn't see I'm in pain. It's that he sees this all the time and he's got to cut that empathy part out in order to do his job better. Right. So I think that's something that
and sometimes it's so urgent that they don't have time for the empathy. It's just so important to get the test done and to get the IV in and to so sometimes they have to be a little rough, right? Because it's urgent and it's like, we can't talk about it first. Like we need to do it, right? And that might be experienced as them being a little rough on you and not caring about you, but it's actually more about saving your life in reality because it has to be done a little quickly. So I think you're very right. We have to remember they're just humans as well.
Yeah, and I bet you that 99% of the problems we have, if we were to sit down and have a conversation with that person and they told us their story and we told them our story, like we would connect and be like, oh, that's why you did what you did, or that's why this. Like I remember listening to like a YouTube, like I don't know, it's like a YouTube support video or something on like growing your YouTube, and he was talking about like he got a mean comment and then he wanted to immediately respond back and be like, why would you say that? Whatever. And instead he's like, I sent them a direct message and said, you know what? You're right. Like I was kind of rude when I said that, or I did like, that really made me think, your comment, and like was kind of nice about it and sent it directly to him. And then that person responded and was like, I'm so sorry. I was just having a bad day. I didn't even think you would read it. And it's like once you like sit down and actually talk to someone and know their story, like you really do see them for a completely different light. The problem is we can't do that with most people. Like most of the time we don't get to just go to the back room with the doctor and like talk to them and see what's going on and get all the background, and they don't get all the background of us and see that no, we seriously can't function at home. It's not just that, we're not just trying to get medicine or whatever. Like we actually, like they were to see what we actually went through, they would see us differently. And if we were to see what they went through, we would see them differently. Right.
Yeah.
Do you have any other suggestions for coping with medical trauma or strategies that you suggest?
Well, I think what has done the most for me is actually I went into psychotherapy when I got my depression and anxiety. And that really, really helped, just getting help to put it into words, what you actually been through, having the fact that he told me, I think you have a trauma, like, whoa, just recognizing that I actually had a trauma. And this type of therapy I was in was very body focused. So it was a lot. We did some meditations where I would scan my body and like, okay, so where in your body are you feeling tight, heavy?
Oh, my therapist says that too.
And like, and then from that point, talk about what's going on in your mind and your body and letting the trauma go and doing exercises for that. And that has really, really helped me. So I can definitely recommend going into therapy, whatever type of therapy would work for you. I also do a lot of mindfulness in general, especially with my anxiety. Breathing is just taking a deep breath sometimes to just calm my nerves a little bit and do breathing exercises. I also do yoga. I do traditional yoga, so not fitness yoga. It's more about the breathing and moving and feeling your body, and that, I have to say, is probably one of the best things I've done for myself, because the thing is, when you go through illness and you get this trauma, you tend to disconnect from your body because it's painful to be in it, right? It's painful to acknowledge how you feel and how your body feels. And what traditional yoga does is it teaches you to listen to your body. It teaches you to reconnect with your body and to your intuition. So it's made me reconnect with my body, and I understand my body a lot more. I'm able to listen to it more. I'm able to understand the symptoms more, so that I can react or act on it a little bit faster than when I was disconnected from my body. And also just breathing and learning how to be in a situation that's a little bit stressful. Sometimes it's also about being in a plank, for example, and then how do you react to that? That's hard. Like, how do you react? Do you get frustrated, or can you take a deep breath and be in that plank a little bit longer? Like that kind of mental training. Yoga is not a cure for anything, but it's a great tool to just get to know yourself and your body again, and be mindful. And it's healthy for a lot of other things as well. But that has really, really helped me get back into my body and being one with my body. I like to meditate as well. I don't do that I have ADD, so it's a little bit hard. So it's not something I do as much as yoga. Yeah. But I do like to do it. But I always do guided meditations, because then if I have to listen to someone tell me what to do, then I can focus easier. I can't just sit down and my brain is like, so, and then being kind to yourself in general, being good to yourself. Tell yourself, acknowledge that you have trauma, that you feel pain, that there is something, and say to yourself, that's okay. It's okay to feel this way, and do something good for you. Maybe you like to sit with a weighted blanket and drink a cup of tea and just be with yourself. Maybe you have a good friend you can call and talk to it about, or eating, even eating some candy or something, like, if that makes you feel a little better in the situation. And I will also say, be open about it. I think it's really dangerous to keep it to yourself and let it be caught inside of you. Like, you need to be honest. Also, because you can have some response to it that people might not understand, and they might misunderstand why you react or behave a certain way sometimes. So by being open, you can let your friends and family be a part of it, and they can understand you a lot better, and you can get it out, right? You can talk and get it out and be like, this is what I'm struggling with. I also find journaling is actually really good as well, putting it into writing. Not thinking too much about what to write, just sit down and just write whatever comes to you. And I think that my therapist taught me that I want to share, because it was just so true. I remember I was sitting at an appointment. I was having my arms around my bowel, my stomach area, like I was crossing. And he said to me, I noticed that you do that a lot. And why do you do that? And I was like, I don't know. Like, I think I want to protect it, right? I want to hold it. I want to protect it so nothing can touch it because it's sick. And then he said, well, just a while ago, you were talking about how sick you were of your bowel, how annoying it was. And you kind of hated it because it always felt so bad, and you had diarrhea, and then you had pain, and but now you're protecting it. He said, what's that? And I was like, I have no idea. And we went a little more into it, and he said to me, have you ever thought about it, like, instead of being mad at your bowel and being like against your bowel, fighting against your bowel, maybe you should think of it as you and your bowel are fighting together against an illness, because it's not your bowel's fault. It's being attacked by your immune system. It's an illness. And that's probably why you want to protect it as well, because you know. So instead of having this disconnect to it and this, like, it's the enemy, remember to love your bowel, remember to love your body, because your body in a whole is fighting with you, not against you. And I actually think practicing that love for your body, practicing realizing it's not your body that's trying to kill you, it's the illness, because your body will literally do anything to keep you alive. So you're in it together, if that makes sense, instead of having this whole distance from your body and being mad at your body for not working normally. Because your body loves you unconditionally and will do anything to keep you alive. And I just thought that was such a beautiful thing. And I have been working a lot on that since, through yoga, among other things.
Oh,
I really
that.
wanted to share that.
Yeah,
it was really beautiful.
And the way that you explained that was so good, because I've done yoga and I always feel better. But like I didn't like, I knew part of it was mental, I knew part of it was helping my physical. But like the way you explained it of like reconnecting with your body is like, that's just something I hadn't really like realized that's why that helps so much. And like other things that I've done through therapy and stuff, like that's why there are times where I hate my body and I just like I'm in such a bad place mentally, and then other times I'm the same physical pain but I'm doing better, and I think that's why, like that's the connection. Like I'm not fighting against my body, I'm working with it. I know like a few years ago I did a podcast episode, I'll try to find it and maybe link it, but it was about how to be friends with your chronic illness. And I remember like I had good ideas back then, but I'm struggling with it recently to like remind myself. But it is like, if you're like with a friend, doesn't mean you get along all the time. Like my best friend, we're not like seeing eye to eye. And even just recently, she told me something I was doing that that isn't great, and like, oh, you should work on this. And it didn't feel good, but then we talked about it, and it strengthened our relationship and we got better. It's like we don't always see eye to eye, but we work together and we love each other. And even if there's things that need to change or need to improve, we work together on that. And that's what makes us such good friends, right? And when you're friends with your body, it's the same thing. Like when you're avoiding it and you can't, right? You literally can't leave your body. And so I tell myself all the time, like, oh, I just want to get away. Like if I'm struggling as a mom, or I'm struggling, with the weather, I can get away. I can physically remove myself and take a break and then come back and I reset. But with your body, you can't do that. And I think when your brain thinks, okay, I need to get away, then it disconnects from your body, just like you were saying, and that just makes you feel worse. But when you reconnect with it, like literally you'll have the same pain and I feel so much better. And I think it's exactly how you explained it. I love that so much. I also was thinking, like when you know your triggers, that helps. Like you were saying, like when you recognize it and you recognize like, oh, you had this medical trauma, it helped you to like, one, give yourself grace. Like, oh, that's why I do, this and that. That's why this is hard for me. That's why this anxiety is coming up. Like when I know, okay, this thing, like I get anxiety, I'm like, oh, that thing triggered me. Or like I'm trying to find a new primary care doctor. I'm like, oh, if I look back to my past experience, I see that I had trauma here. That's why I've been pushing off going and finding a doctor. Not because I don't think anyone will help me, not because I don't need help, but because I'm scared that will happen again. And just recognizing that and like letting yourself like get that out, whether you're writing it out or talking it out, I think that helps so much to just know that this is why I'm struggling with this, right? Because we tell ourselves like, no, you should just be able to do it. You shouldn't have any problems. Aimee, you shouldn't have anxiety. Aimee, you should just be able to get through this. You did really good last week. Why are you struggling this week? You should be able to do it again. So I think there are amazing healthcare professionals out there. And like I was saying before, like we need to see them as human and not just like, oh, they're against us, or, there's the chronic illness side and then chronic illness people, and then there's the healthcare people, and we're separate. Like we do need to work together, just like we work together with our body. And I think we need to respect their professional opinions, even if, they're not what we think. So how do you respect their expertise and recommendations, but also balance like advocating for yourself if you don't agree with them? How do you balance all that?
It's it can be difficult, especially if you are in pain. I tend to get a little mad, but I think they understand that. I think it's in general important to have a positive energy when you go into a healthcare professional, an energy where you are giving them the benefit of the doubt. You are saying to yourself, of course this person want to help me, because sometimes we experience the situation more positive if we come with a more positive energy rather than negative. But I think, of course, you should never scream, you should never yell, you should never disrespect people. But the mindset has to be, and this is something I've had to learn, we have this weird idea in society that healthcare professionals, and especially doctors, have some kind of authority, and we can't really say anything to what they're saying. And we have to get away from that mindset and remember that they are there for you. It's their job to help you. You are kind of the boss in this situation, and they are hired to help you as a customer. And so it's actually okay to have boundaries. It's okay to have demands. You can do this in a very respectful way. You don't have to disrespect anyone. But it's actually okay to say, if you feel like the doctor is not listening to you, it's okay to say it. It's okay to say, you know what? I don't feel like you're listening to me right now. I don't think you understand. If you don't feel like there is a good chemistry, that's also okay to say that you want to try another doctor because you just don't feel like you're good at communicating here. It's okay if it's like really bad. It's actually okay to complain to management or something like that, demanding to see another doctor maybe. So it's okay to have these boundaries and to speak up. And I think what people will experience if they say to a doctor, for example, I don't think you're listening to me. I don't think you understand me. I don't think you're hearing me. I don't think you care. A lot of times you will probably experience the doctor going, oh, that wasn't my intention. Like they're not even aware that that's how you're feeling at that point. And they might try harder to make you feel like they are listening to you. Or they might say, oh, you know what? It's just, I'm so behind on my schedule today. I know I'm a little distracted. I'm sorry. You will experience that they didn't realize that's what was going on. And if they are just not nice people, then you just demand another doctor. My sister actually had this really, really good sentence. I hear a lot from people with chronic illness that comes to the doctors with physical symptoms where they're told it's all in their head. And my sister, she suffers from chronic pain. And before she knew that, they couldn't find out why she had all this pain all the time. And there was this one doctor who said to her, I think you might be a hypochondriac. Is that correctly pronounced in English?
I just posted a video.
Yes.
My video that went live yesterday. It was about
I'm
a hypochondriac.
Yeah. And my sister's response was, that's fine. If I'm a hypochondriac, that's fine. That's a thing. But then find someone who can help me with that. Refer me to someone who can help me instead of just sending me home. And I actually think that was brilliant. Like, if the doctor says it's all in your head, then say, fine, then send me to a psychiatrist so we can find out if it's all in my head, right? I actually think that was a brilliant sentence that I wanted to pass on to everybody out there. So speak up and trust your own intuition. Don't let the doctor's authority make you doubt yourself. If you know something is wrong, you have to be very clear. There's something wrong. The test might come back saying nothing is wrong, but then you took the wrong test because there is something wrong. And be very clear what's wrong. And actually, I find it very helpful to exaggerate a little bit sometimes. Like, if I call them and I feel pain in my bowel and they're like, well, do you have a fever? Yes, even if I don't. Because I know if I have a fever, they will see me because it might be because my infection numbers are increasing. So actually exaggerating a little bit. Like, I can hardly walk. You might be able to walk fine, but I can hardly walk. Like, you just exaggerate a little bit. If you can act a little bit in the doctor's office, that's a really good thing too. If you can look a little sicker than you actually I know it's really terrible, but it works to exaggerate a little bit to get the point through to the doctor sometimes, in my experience. But practice speaking up, practice being very clear what it is you need. And if that's something that's really hard for you, find someone who can always go with you, who are not afraid of speaking up. Someone who can say, listen, we need to do something now, like someone who can help you. In Denmark, we have a patient union that you can be a member of. And if you feel gaslighted, if you feel badly treated, if you feel no one's taking you serious, or even if something like you go to the ER, you get rejected and then you almost died, like those kind of situations, you can call this union and they will help you legally. They will send someone with you to the doctor's office and advocate for you. So if that's something you have where you live, it can be a really, really good idea to be a member of a union like that.
Yeah, that's so good to know. And I loved, what was your sister? Is that? Yeah. I think we have this, like, I don't know why, but like this idea that like if it is like all in your head, then it's not real. And I know we started this whole conversation talking about how our physical and mental health are so connected. And I think like say there is someone who's a hypochondriac who has no, physical pain that can be shown on any scan or anything, but like their brain is making this up essentially. That's still a chronic illness. That's a mental illness.
Yeah.
And we treat it like it's not as big of a deal. When in some ways it could be way bigger of a deal. Like in some ways, like a mental illness could be more severe than a physical illness. The medical community treats it like it's not as big a deal. Oh, it's just in your head. Oh, you're just a hypochondriac. And I think we ourselves treat it that way, because I remember when I would, trying to get diagnosed with my chronic illness before I got diagnosed with POTS, I was like, I know something physical is wrong with my body. And now I look back and I'm like, okay, yes, there actually was an extra physical thing that was wrong with my body. And that, validated me and made me feel better to know that, okay, your blood wasn't circulating well. You do get sick when you do this thing. But now I've learned that I think like 50% of my physical problems come from my brain, because I had some emotional trauma in my past that when I have a trigger for my emotional trauma, I also have a flare. And I used to think like I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia as a doctor saying like, well, we don't know what it is, but you have widespread pain, so we're going to call it fibromyalgia because there's really not a good test for it. And I remember for a while feeling bad about that. Like, oh no, like fibromyalgia is not a real thing. It's just a cop out. It's just because they gave up. And then I got diagnosed with POTS, and at first I wanted to replace the fibromyalgia diagnosis with POTS. And now I'm like, no, I have both, because I do have widespread pain that's unexplained that every scan will tell you is fine. And I have POTS symptoms too, but I have extra symptoms that don't go along with POTS and pains that like there's no explanation. But part of it is my brain. Part of it is in my head, as you would call it, but that's not a negative thing. That's a real it's a real experience that I'm having, just because you can't see it on a scan. It's still like the experience is a real thing. And I think we need to like lighten the heaviness that we get from things being in our head, because my brain is very powerful. It can make
the brain controls
pain.
Everything. It controls everything. It's they made I heard about this. They were doing like a placebo study, and they were testing a new antidepressant, I think it was, and then one half got hope pills. I think that was calcium in them, and then the others got the actual antidepressants. And then this guy who was depressed, he swallowed all of the pills, and this was the calcium pills, because he wanted to kill himself. And he started to feel really sick, right? And his blood pressure was lowering, and he was having all the symptoms of being drugged, and the body was shutting down. And he came to the hospital, and they couldn't find out. They were like, "What did you take?" And he kept saying he took this, but there was no trace of it in his body. And they were like, "What is going on?" So they ended up calling the doctor who was doing the study. And the doctor came in, and he looked at him and said, "You are on the calcium pills. You're not getting the actual antidepressants." And once the doctor said that, everything became normal. Everything. So just the belief that he was taking something that could have killed him. He had all the symptoms. They couldn't find out what was wrong with him. And it was just the brain believing. So that's crazy.
I totally believe that. And then the cool thing is it works the other way too. Like that if I have hope and that I'm going to find something to heal me one day, that I'm going to, get better. Every time I truly believe that I'm going to get better, I do get better. And when I have physical pain, it's so much easier to deal with. When my brain is in a good place, it almost doesn't matter where my physical health is. There, of course, are certain levels where your physical state will take over. But in general, at least for me in my chronic illness, when I am in a bad place mentally, I can't handle the physical pain, and it literally gets worse. But when I have hope,
it does.
It keeps me going. And it lightens the pain in a lot of ways, because
it does. It's less intense when you're good mentally,
which is so wild.
Totally.
And that's what's so hard about chronic illness is I feel like people only see the one side. People see the physical side, or they see oh, you have anxiety. Yeah, that's a thing. But they don't take into account that just living chronically ill and being in pain all the time is a mental load to carry that you don't get to set down, and you have to carry it with you all the time, and you have to constantly be on your brain. I have to do work every day on my brain, and if I let up just a little bit, just like if I'm on a diet, then it's helping my physical health, and I let up just a little bit, I'm going to get worse. With my mental health, if I let up a little bit on where I'm at mentally, then I feel so much worse, which is why I'm starting a community. I've been coaching people, but I realize I need constant coaching for myself, and I know everybody else does too. We all need constant support, and we need to constantly be working on our brains just as much as we work on our bodies. And so I have a community coming out. I'll link down below. I have a interest form. I haven't opened it, but I'm trying to get an idea of what do we need, because I know what I need, but is that the same thing as what everybody else wants? So I'll link that down below. And you're not signing up, but just give me some ideas of make sure we get everything in there, because I just think it's so freaking important to work on our brains constantly. And so it's every week we need to sit down and think about this again, because just like you were talking about with connecting with your body, I was saying a few years ago I made a podcast about being friends with your body, and then I've forgotten that because I'm not keeping up with it. I'm not working on my brain as much as I did a couple years ago, and now I'm I got to get back into that. I got to every single day have a minute where I work on my brain so that my body is not as big of a burden on me, if that makes sense. And
it makes a lot of sense.
So I feel a big piece of this is we have to give ourselves compassion, right? Compassion through all this, and we've kind of talked about that. But do you have any suggestions or ideas of how we can give ourselves compassion when we're on this journey and there's ups and downs and there's physical and mental symptoms and all of that?
It's hard, right? And especially, I will say, it's when I had depression, that was probably the worst thing I ever experienced. it's way worse than having a physical illness because you're not motivated. And the depression is all about hitting yourself in the head, right? It's all about you suck so much. You're just like, oh, nobody wants to hang out with you. Like, why are you even here? Like, it's so bad. So I think that's really, really difficult in that situation. But practicing compassion, and there's so many ways to do it, right? But I just find that mindfulness is a really great way. And whether that's yoga or meditating or going for a walk in a forest or whatever works for you, really. But just practice being in it in a way. Like, just be and not have to think forward all the time, or not have to think of what could have been, or like just be and be in that situation. Practice how you react to the situations. I think can help. And it's hard, right? Self-love is so hard. I mean, it's I'm not there yet, I have to say, but keep saying to yourself, it's okay. Sometimes saying it out loud, looking in the mirror. Okay, I feel like shit. That's okay. You're good enough as you are. If you feel bad because you see all your friends, go on to getting promotions at work and moving into, and you're like feeling behind in life, be like, you know what? It's okay. See how far I've actually come, even though I have illnesses. Like, my battle has been so much harder in many ways, and I'm still here. Give yourself some credit is also a really good way of showing yourself compassion, because you have to be, or you become really strong when you're sick. Give yourself some credit for how far you've come. Give yourself some credit from the first time you got symptoms to now. And be a little proud of yourself, telling yourself in the mirror, you're awesome. This is amazing. You're still here. You made it. Like, that kind of thing, really. Talking to yourself. I know it sounds stupid, but I actually do that. I look in the mirror and I'm like, it's fine. It's okay. You're good enough the way you are. And I've been practicing a lot of, every time I get this thought in my head that, Helen, you're like only working part-time because you can't work full-time. Like, you're such a loser. You're such a fail. Like, I practice every time that come up. I'm like, I acknowledge that it comes up, but then I tell myself, let that go. Let that thought pass, because that's not fair. So just practice letting go of those thoughts, acknowledge them and say goodbye, because I can't work full-time because I'm sick. Like, it's not because I'm lazy. It's not because I'm a failure. So practicing changing your mindset. And what I've been told by some meditation person, what do they call them? Someone who make guided meditations, is that you have to acknowledge when a thought come up. You have to acknowledge it's there, because you can't stop your brain from thinking. And then literally just saying, I'm letting it go. I'm letting that thought go. And then I'm adding a new thought that it's okay. I'm good enough the way I am. And so for me, meditation, again, yoga, mindfulness in general, sometimes sitting on a bench looking out to the ocean and just thinking that the planet is such an amazing place. And wow, I can't believe I made it. I'm here. This is awesome. Like, can really make a difference. And do whatever feels good for you. Whatever you do, as much as you can that you actually like to do. Be a little better at saying no to all the things that you feel obligated to do. And of course, you have to go to work if you have a job. But just be better at saying, you know what, I just need some me time. So no, I'm not going out this weekend. No, I can't come to that family event. No, I can't go out to dinner. Whatever you don't want to do because you just need to do something else, something that feels better for you. Learn to say no.
Yeah, it's so powerful.
And do what you want.
Saying no is
it's hard,
but it's so powerful.
Do more things you want to do.
Yeah.
And not just what everybody expects and what everybody else wants to do.
Yeah, I love that.
It's hard to learn, but it's really effective.
Yeah, it is. Well, and we just think our thoughts are true. Like, that's like the biggest thing I teach. I teach it in my course. I'm going to teach it a ton in my community, that like our thoughts And I do this still, even though I've been teaching this for like years. Like I still sometimes tell myself like my thoughts are true. Like my life sucks, or like my body sucks. Like that's just a thought. Like it's not true. There are true things. This symptom that I have is real. It's, I have POTS, whatever. Those are real. But then we have thoughts about it. And that's where we feel crappy because like the circumstance itself we're in is just neutral. Like it's not good. It's not bad. And then we have thoughts about it. Like I shouldn't be sick, or I should be farther along in life, or I should be able to take my kids to the park with my friends. Like, no, that's just a thought. And when I get out of that, that's when I feel better. But like you said, you have to acknowledge the thoughts you're having, because you can't just go from I hate myself to I love myself. Exactly. I like to add like an and statement and be like, I hate myself and I'm really good at teaching my kids. Like, what can I think of that's like an and? Yeah. And then the next day, it's like, oh, it's a little bit lighter. Like, okay, I don't hate myself today, because I acknowledge that, yes, that's how I felt yesterday, but also there's other things going on. And it kind of opens your mind just enough to get you out of that and be like, okay, I don't enjoy the life I'm living right now. And I'm so blessed to have this in my life.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
Because we get so stuck important. Into one end or the other. Yeah. And like, I am so bad at like the all or nothing. Like either I'm all in or I'm all out. And I got to really like stick those and statements in to remind myself that like both things can be true.
That's a really great idea. I feel like a big failure most of the time when it comes to work. I had so many hopes and dreams. So what I do is when I start to feel like, oh, you're such a failure career-wise, you're so like, la, 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 I will, because my part-time job is in a school library and they love me there. They don't know how they made the school work without me before I came there working part-time. The kids love me. So I keep saying to myself, but Caroline, this job you are doing, you are actually making a huge difference from the people at that school, for the kids and for the teachers and for all of the staff, because you're actually bringing value. You work part-time, yeah, sure, you're not a CEO or something, but you are bringing a lot of value to the workplace you are in, so you are actually a success. Like, look what you can do, how much of a difference you can make, even though you're sick and you only work part-time. So, and that makes me feel so much better to be acknowledged. So it's true what you're saying, right? We have to, okay, I have this negative thought. I have to remember all the blessings as well, all the good stuff I do have going, because of course life never just sucks, or it's never just good. Like, it's always a balance.
And we don't know what your life would have been if you were able to work full time. But I like to believe like this is actually the better one. We don't know. Yeah. But what if this is better? Like what you're doing here is so much more impactful on the world than what you would have done if you were a CEO of some huge company. We don't.
Yeah, exactly.
There's no way to know either way. So let's
job.
Just believe that it's better, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Do you have any other advice for people who live chronically ill before we leave you?
I would say my greatest advice is trust yourself and listen to yourself, because you know best. So never doubt yourself. Even if the test results come back and there is nothing wrong, don't doubt yourself. Don't doubt that the symptoms are not there or whatever. Like, if you feel something is wrong, trust that. If you feel everything is fine as well, then you're fine. The doctor doesn't have to say, oh, we want to admit you for a month because we have to do testing. Like, no, I'm fine. Like, okay, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but trust yourself, trust your intuition. Your body knows best. You're the only one who knows what's going on inside of your body. Nobody can see it or feel it for you. So stay true to yourself, trust yourself, and speak up if you need to.
Thank you so much. That was so helpful. You said so many things that just like today have hit me and made me rethink a lot of, the ways I've been thinking about things. And how can we get more help from you?
you can go subscribe to my YouTube channel, The Art of Being Ill, and you can also go follow me on my Instagram. It's also called The Art of Being Ill. I'm not as active there as I am on YouTube.
Same.
And you're also, of course, welcome to reach out to me if you want to talk.
Hey, I will link everything in the description on YouTube, or if you're listening to this on podcasts, you can check the podcast show notes. I love that name too. That's such a cute name, The Art of Being Ill.
Thank you.
I feel like it's the
It is an
little
art.
things that like lighten it, right? When we're just like, it's so heavy. That's why my podcast, I changed the name to Sick is Cool, because I'm like, it's just, I want it to be lighter. I want it to be fun.
Yeah.
We think of illness as like this heavy, awful thing. And when we get out of our heads and like, let's make it fun. Let's talk about it like it's an art instead of like it's this heavy.
Well, it is an art. It is an art.
So
it's
true.
a skill.
It is.
You should be able to get a degree in being sick.
Yeah.
It's like
I always like to tell myself, like, I am so good at being chronically ill. Like, this was the best trial for me because I am an expert at living chronically ill.
Seriously, fun story to end with. Now you're saying that, being a great patient, I was at a checkup with my Crohn's doctor because I had problems with diarrhea. And he had a medical student with him. And then he asks me if I'm taking my medicine, and I say yes. And then he looks at the medical student and he says, well, normally I would go into asking her a little bit more about when she's taking it, how she's taking it, does she take it every day? But Caroline is a magnificent patient, so I don't have to ask her about that. And I was like, that's the greatest compliment I've ever had. I'm a magnificent patient.
I love it. Yeah. See, it's like, but if you're in a bad place, you miss those wins, right? You're like, you're blinded by them. And we can laugh about things too. I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. This was seriously such a good episode. So I'll have everything linked below. And thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. It was my pleasure.